Hello and welcome back. My name is Ned, and in this video series we will learn how to build a simple CRM application using the Caspio platform. In part 4 of this video series, I will teach you how using Caspio's powerful point-and-click interface you can create all the necessary input forms, reports, and charts needed to power this simple CRM application. Let's check it out. In the previous video, we learned how to build two login screens, one for Tom and Kelly, who are the employees of the application, and one for John Doe, who happens to be the manager of this application. Once you have the login screens created, the next step is to go to DataPages, and this is where all of the functionality is going to be created. Don't be confused by this term DataPages. That's a Caspio term. Personally, I like to call them widgets, because when you build a data page or a widget, Caspio is going to give you a snippet of code that you copy and paste to your website to seamlessly embed all of this functionality. In other words, a data page is like a window to your database. For example, here you can build a form, you can build a report, and that is an interface that looks back to your Caspio tables. Now, before we build our first data page, let me briefly mention something about the folders. The way I want you to use the folders inside your Caspio account is for every user group that your application has, create a folder for it so that you can organize your data pages. Folders help you stay organized. That is their only use inside the Caspio platform. So for example, this specific application has an employee user level and a manager user level. Therefore, I'm going to create one folder for the managers and one folder for the employees. Once you have all of your folders created, if you want to begin working on the employee side of functionality, just expand that folder or open it and click on the new data page. When you click on the new data page, it's going to launch Caspio's point-and-click interface. And these are all the different types of functionalities that you can build using Caspio. For example, if you need an input form to add data to your database, you can build a submission form. If you need reports that output the data via the web, you can select from this data page type. If you want to build calendars, so for example, if you're building an appointment tracking application or event management, a calendar may be a good option so that you can plot all of the dates and all of the events onto an actual calendar. If you want to build dashboards and analytics and charts, Caspio does provide you with a point-and-click interface to easily create charts for analytics. And finally, if you're a little bit more technically adept, you can build some more sophisticated applications using an HTML data page. For now, what we're going to begin building is a simple input form that allows Tom and Kelly to add a new lead. So let's build this form and click Next. On the second screen, what you're going to notice here is a drop-down called Datasource. To what table do you want Tom and Kelly to add these new contacts or these leads? Well, we want to select our contact info table because that's where all of our fields reside. So when I submit the form, I want this information to feed into the contact table. Let's call this form New Lead. You're going to have your own naming convention. This is the name that I'd like to use. We also give you a whole bunch of styles that are preloaded inside your account. The styles dropdown is all about the aesthetics, the look and feel of your form. You can also fully customize your own style by going to the styles object. I'm going to go ahead and use my custom style that I created for this demo. And I'm also going to use the localization English for this demo as well. Now, the localization is all about regional settings. If you wanted to change the format of the date, language of the form, you can apply a specific localization that is completely up to you. Now we have access and security. If I want to password protect this form, which I do, I only want Tom and Kelly to have access to it, I'm going to select my authentication that's only given access to Tom and Kelly. And in the prior video, I taught you how to build that authentication, which was built on top of the view that's filtering Tom and Kelly. So you're going to apply that authentication here and hit Next. And now the wizard is basically saying, well, what fields would you like to include in this submission form? I'd like to include all of my fields in the submission form. Click Next one last time. And when you reach this screen, Configure Properties, you're going to be able to select each field on the left-hand side and make modifications on the right side. Now, some of the important changes that I want to make here, I'm not going to spend too much time teaching you how to modify the form. We do have other videos that help with that. I'm just going to flag my first and last name as a required field, which means you have to fill those fields in before you can submit the form. If you're interested in seeing what the form looks like at this point, you can always click on Preview, and the first thing you'll see is a login screen because we have applied that authentication to this data page. So if you want to see what the form looks like, you're going to have to log in as either Tom or Kelly. So let's go ahead and log in as Kelly. And once you log in, you get to actually see what the form looks like using the preview mode. You can continue making additional changes to this form, and there are still a few more changes that I'd like to make. So let's go back to the wizard here. Let's go ahead and go to the contact method, and I want to show you that instead of that being a text field, we can actually click on this drop down and turn that field into a radio button and add our own custom values. So for example, email, phone number, or you can also say no preference. The second modification that I would like to make is the stage field. If you recall, we created a lookup table that contains all of the different stages in our sales funnel. So instead of that being a text field, I would like my users to be able to select that using a drop-down. And once you select drop-down, you can add your own custom values here, or you can do a lookup table. Now in this example, I'm going to use both custom values and lookup table, and the reason why, under both, for display, I would like to say select stage. Now make sure you delete the value because you don't want this to be stored in the table. And then under Lookup Table tab, you can automatically link to that stage lookup where you have added all of those options and those values in the prior section of the video series. A couple of more changes that I would like to make here. For example, the notes section, I'm going to turn that into a text area so the user can see a nice box of what they're typing inside it. And last change that I would like to make is the very last field here called Assigned to by Staff ID. When I log in as Kelly and I submit my lead, I don't want to have to manually select my name on the form because I know that I'm logged in. It should automatically recognize my ID and stamp it into the contacts table. So what we're going to do with this form element dropdown is we're going to make this field hidden, and we're going to grab the authentication field and stamp her ID by selecting this option from the drop-down. Once again, you can click preview at any time to see the changes that you made. Here we're linking to our lookup table of all of the stages. I'm hiding my submitted by ID field, but we know that when we submit the form, it's going to stamp Kelly's ID in the contact table. And we can continue making changes until we get to our desired look and feel. But if you're done, you can simply just close the preview if you're happy with the way the form looks. Click Finish, and now you get to see your very first data page. In the last part of this video series, I will teach you how to deploy this form to a website, but for now, let's continue building our application. Now that we can add this lead as an employee, let's go ahead and build a report that allows us to view these leads and also see a nice graph or a chart that displays all of the deal sizes for each one of our contacts. To do this, we're going to build a new data page inside the employee folder. And this time, instead of inputting data, we're going to build a report to output the data. Now you have a variety of options here that you can choose on how you want the data to be laid out. But for right now, what I'm going to do is build a combination chart and a report. We're going to hit Next. And once again, I'm going to use the same table of contacts because that's where all the data is going to reside. In other words, if I'm submitting my contact information and deal sizes and stages inside this table, this is the table that I want to output the data from. Let's go ahead and call this Search Contacts. I will use the same style, and I'm going to select my English localization, and once again we're going to restrict access to just our employees who happen to be Tom and Kelly. On the following screen, I'm going to choose to build a search form, and once again I want to enable record level security because I want my staff employees just to see their own leads. On the next screen, now it's asking me what fields do you want to use in the search form. In other words, do you want to have some criteria on the web that you allow your staff employees to be able to search the contacts? So let's just keep it simple and include a few fields here. Of course, you can include as many as you want, but for now we'll hit Next. Now on this screen, it's asking you to configure properties of each one of your fields. Now you'll notice that the comparison type for the search form is set to equal, which means I have to know the exact thing that I'm searching for down to a letter. However, if for the first name I choose to go from equal to contains, it's more of a broader search range. So if you type in letter A, click search, it's going to return all the first names that contain letter A. And to speed up on time, I'm going to configure this to say contains for each one of our search fields, even though you have a variety of options here as well. But just to keep things simple, we'll do that and click next. Now, what information do you want to display on the results page? Let's go ahead and display the stage, maybe first name, last name, title, phone number, and also the deal size for each contact. I think this information is fairly important. We may also include a follow-up date so that we know what date and time we need to follow up with this lead. Then we'll hit next one more time. And on this screen, you can enable some editing capabilities. So I want my employees to be able to use a grid edit, which is like a spreadsheet in Excel. And I also want them to be able to do bulk edit. So if I need to perform some kind of a mass update, I have this feature called bulk edit that allows me to select more than one entry and make changes to them. On this screen, I have my stage field highlighted, and what I would like to do is just simply enable data grouping, because I want to be able to group all of my data based on stage. I think it's a really good report to be able to view all the leads that you're working with in your prospect bucket, all of the leads that you have in your forecast bucket, and all of the deals that you have won or closed. I also would like to be able to enable a collapsible group so I can expand these sections at any time that I want. And because we have this deal size field inside the results page, what we can actually do here is we can calculate some values in order to get the total per group and also an aggregate of all of the data. And to do that, we're going to insert what we call totals and aggregation. We're going to find that field that contains the deal size, move that to the right, and then using the function sum, we can get the total across all of the records. Now when we go to the advanced tab, for each one of my groups, I would like the data to appear below the data. And then on the next screen, we get to configure the bulk edit screen. Now the only minor modification that I'm going to make here for the stage field, instead of that being a text field, I'm actually going to change that into a drop-down and select my lookup table that contains all of my stages. This way I can quickly select the stage and perform a bulk edit if needed. On the following screen, I'm going to choose to display 25 records per page. That is the default number, so we'll stick with that. And then you get to choose what kind of a chart you would like to create out of the data that's contained inside a contacts table. Now, I would like to go with a stack column chart so that I can create stacks per stage. And let's see how we can configure that on the following screen. For chart settings, here you can add your title. You can make some slight modifications here. Under Datasource Settings, I'm going to select the first radio button because I'm trying to calculate the values based on a single field, which is stage, and I would like to be able to group my data that way. For my x-axis, I would like to plot the month, and from the drop-down, I'm going to select my follow-up date. I also want the date by to be a roll-up, and I want to display the data based on month. As for my series, I would like to plot the stage, so I'm going to select that from the drop-down. For my y-axis, I would like to format these values as custom and select currency so that we can display the dollar sign. And for my value, the actual calculation, I want that to compute based on the deal size field, and I want the sum of all of my data. On the following screen, you can sort your data on the chart based on any one of your fields, or you can just leave that empty and hit next. Now on this screen, you can choose to enable a details page. If you enable a details page, you're allowing the employee to drill into each one of the leads to make further modifications, but just for the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and disable that and save our changes. Now when I preview my report, what you're going to notice, here are all of our search fields that we created just a few minutes ago. But when I click search, we're not going to see any data plotted onto a chart, and we don't actually see any data underneath. The reason behind that is because we currently don't have any data inside the contacts table. It is an empty table. So let's go ahead and make one submission. We're going to preview the form new lead to input some data. Bear in mind that I'm still logged in as Kelly, so let's make one submission here. We'll say Kevin Smith. And none of the other fields are required, so I'm simply just going to set the stage to be a prospect. I'm going to set the follow-up date for next week, and the deal size can be perhaps 15,000. As soon as I hit submit, we're going to see a confirmation message. And because this entry now is inside a contacts table, if I preview my report one more time and click search, you will now see the prospect for July. We actually get to see our data grouped under prospect, and we can see the total, group total, and also the grand total at the bottom of the report and aggregate across all of our records. Now let's build our second report, which is a dashboard that displays the funnel chart so that we can see our entire pipeline as Kelly. To do this, we don't necessarily have to build a brand new data page from scratch. If you have a data page that's very similar to the one that you want to build, you can actually make a copy of that data page to quickly and easily build your second report. And in this case, I already have a report created. I'm just going to click on more and click on copy. And let's call this second report dashboard and click save. What I've done with this is I basically recreated the same exact report with all of the same functionality. And if you want that second report to behave differently, you're going to have to click on edit and make a few adjustments. Let's click next until we get to the screens where we want to apply those changes. So we'll hit next. I'm not going to make any changes on this screen. We're going to keep this the way it is. Now on this screen, I am no longer interested in seeing a search form. What I would like to be able to see is a dashboard that displays the funnel chart of my sales pipeline, and I would like to be able to see data underneath. So we're going to go ahead and disable the search form and just go with a filtered report. On the next screen, it's asking me, do you want to filter data based on a specific field? Let's just go ahead and skip that and hit next. And now we're going to keep the results page the same way as before. I'm not going to make any changes here. Let's stick with the grid edit and bulk edit. In fact, the only change that I'm going to make is once I get to my chart. Instead of seeing a stack column chart, let's have the data represented a little bit differently in this one. Let's go ahead and use the funnel chart. Hit next. And now let's go ahead and configure the funnel chart. So as for my title, let's go ahead and have this say pipeline by stage. And instead of having an auto width, let's go ahead and make it a fixed width, maybe 600 pixels. For my category, I'm not going to choose to have date here. Let's just go ahead and set the category to stage. And for my value, same way as before, I'm just going to use the field deal size, use the aggregation sum. And on the next screen, we get to choose if we want to sort the data on the chart. Let's not go ahead and do that. We're going to hit next. And let's disable the details page one more time. Even though you have the option here to enable the details page, I'm going to click finish to save my changes. And now the difference between these two reports is this one here allows me to search and view a stack column chart. Whereas this one, if I hit preview, you get to see a funnel chart, all of the revenue in the prospect stage, and the data underneath. We have now completed all of the functionality on the employee side of the application. Let's now build all of the interfaces for the managers to complete the application build. Let's take a look. Let's create the remainder of the functionality. So I will go ahead and close the preview screen. And if you're done with building all the interfaces for the employee side of things, you can simply close the folder, expand your manager folder, and now you can begin developing all the necessary data pages and components for the manager's functionality. And let's go ahead and begin with a submission form that allows John Doe to add new employees to the staff table. So I will build a new data page here, and I'll need a submission form. We'll hit next. And then we need to set the table that we want to add the employees to. And since our staff table contains all the employee information, I'm going to need to select that table from the drop-down. Let's go ahead and call this form Add New Employee. We have our style, we have our localization applied. Then we need to restrict access. And this time, instead of allowing employees to add new employees, we want John Doe, who happens to be the manager, to add new employees to the table. Only John should have this functionality and access to add employees. On the next screen, I'm going to include all of the fields in my submission form. And finally here we get to configure properties of each one of our submission form fields as before. So we can add a name to our table. We can make this field required. Email. Now for the email field, if you click on the drop down, you will see a special element email. If you select that, it's going to validate the email format. It's going to look for the @ symbol and a period afterwards. And you'll notice that this field is actually automatically required, because if you make a field required or unique in the table, it's automatically going to make that field required on the submission form because something needs to be entered into the table. Then we have the password field. We have some more customization options here if you'd like to enable those. For the role field, here's where we can actually say if this person should be a manager or if this person should be an employee. So I will select the form element and select my drop-down option, and here we can say select role as the first option, delete the value, and then we can add our manager user role or employee user role. Notice that I'm not linking to a lookup table here, and the reason why is because if you only have 1 or 2 options, it's okay to create custom values. But if you're going to have 4, 5, maybe 10 or 50 options, then I recommend that you create a lookup table and then link using the source dropdown to that lookup table. And finally, the status checkbox. I'm just going to add some display text after the checkbox to say check to allow employee login. And once you're done, you can now click on preview to see what the form looks like. Now I have to log in as John because we applied the manager authentication, so I will just type out John Doe here. Password was test. We're going to log in, and now you get to see what that form looks like. So if you hire somebody new to the team as John, you can fill out this form. You can specify if they're a manager or an employee level, and you can check this box to allow them to log in. Let's close the preview screen, and if you're happy with the changes, once again you can click finish to save everything. And now the manager has the ability to add employees to the table. Let's build a report that allows John Doe to view all the employees and make modifications to their account. So we're going to build a new data page. And if we're viewing information on the web, we need to have a report created. So I'll select the tabular format. Even though you have other options here, it's up to you what kind of layout you desire. We're going to hit next. And I'm simply going to link my report to the staff table because that's where all the staff information resides. And we're going to call this data page View Manage Staff. Once again, I will enable my access, and I will go ahead and select my manager login that only gives access to John Doe because I only want John to be able to edit employee information. I don't have a need for a search form. I just want to filter my data, and I don't want to enable record level security because John should have access to all of the staff employees from the table since John is the highest level user in this application. So I'm not going to filter my data based on any field. We're going to skip this, and then on the results page, I would like to be able to display maybe the name of the employee, their email, their user level role, status, and maybe what time and date we added them to the table. Here you can actually say if you want John to be able to edit information via the web. So let's enable some of these checkboxes here and click next. This is my results page. I'm not going to make any changes here. Let's keep going. This is my bulk edit screen. You can make modifications here as well. I'm just going to skip that. On the results page, let's go ahead and display 25 records per page. And let's go ahead and enable the details page. And on the details view, we're going to include some of this information. Let's have date added, name, email, password, role, and also status. Finally, on the details view, we are going to make some modifications here. So for example, date added, we can keep that as the display only field. I would like to be able to edit the employee's name if needed, so I'm going to change that to a text field. I also would like to change the employee's email. Now when it comes to the password field, go ahead and uncheck this box here, require current password validation, because as a manager, we may not actually know what the password is because an employee can change their password at any time. So let's go ahead and disable that. And then for the role field, let's create this to be a drop-down. And let's have manager and employee. So just in case you want to promote somebody or demote somebody, you can go to the details, find that employee, and select from that drop down what user role they're going to have. And finally, for the status, let's turn that into a checkbox. And for display text, we're going to say check to allow login and hit finish. Now, when I preview this report, as John, I get to see everyone from the staff table. I can see their status, if they're active or inactive. And I can also drill into details if I want to make additional changes on that employee's profile. So for example, if I want to promote Tom to a manager level, I can, using this drop down, select manager, hit update, and now Tom is going to have manager level rights. And for our last data page that we're going to build on the manager side is the same type of funnel charting capability as we've given our employees. However, the only difference here is as a manager, I should be able to see all the data, so I will need to disable record level security. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you have a data page that's very similar to the one that you want to build again, you can find that data page, make a copy of it, hit save. So now we have two of the same exact data pages, and I'm going to simply move the copied data page from the employee folder into the manager folder. Once you hit move, you're going to be able to find that data page. I will simply just edit the name to remove the underscore and number 1, hit save one more time. And now let's go ahead and edit this data page because I need to make some modifications here if I'm going to display the correct data for John Doe. So let's hit next. Here, right away, I'm going to change this from employee login to manager login because this report should only be accessible by John Doe. We're going to hit next. I'm going to disable record level security now because as John, since I'm the highest level, I should be able to see all the data from the contacts table. We're now going to filter, and then on the results page, I'm going to include the staff ID as well because I want to group my data based on the employee's name, not just the stage. So let's hit next. Let's keep this the way it is. Let's go ahead and move the staff by assigned ID to the very top. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enable grouping here as well, collapsible group, and I'm just going to rename my label to just say assign to, and we're going to keep everything else the same. This is my bulk edit. Let's keep that the way it is. This is my results page. Here's our chart for our funnel, and we're not going to make any changes here. The data is going to be displayed across the entire table. Let's not make any changes here, and once again, let's go ahead and disable the details page, even though you can enable the details page and add additional functionality. When you're done, click on finish. And now you can preview your very last data page, and what you're going to see is a funnel chart that lists all of the information across all of the employees, and we can see how we're grouping data based on Kelly's information here, and we can see all of her stages. Now, if you had additional data inside this table, of course, you're going to see a lot more entries in the report, and you're going to see different stages depending on how that stage was flagged when you entered the lead the very first time. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video on how to build all of the data pages needed for this entry-level CRM application. As you can see, everything in Caspio uses a point-and-click interface, and if you devote some time to learning how to use the platform, you will be able to build this functionality very, very quickly. And I also hope that you were able to recreate this application inside your account. Join me in the next video where we complete the entire development by deploying this application to a website. I'll see you there.